Hi, everybody. Good morning. This is Erin Dean, your statewide coordinator with Healthy Families. I'm excited that we are all together this morning for April webinar. I am going to provide some central administration updates. And then Satya is going to jump on and kind of walk through some of the home visitor court updates. We sent an email out about this with a HFA video kind of training to watch. And so we thought it'd be a good follow to have Satya come on and kind of review some of those updates and answer any questions you guys might have. And then Satya is also going to share some research findings about some initial family engagement work that has been done. I'm going to kind of oversee the questions. So if you have a question and you want to type that in, I will either read it or I'll unmute you if possible so that you can ask your question. It's nice for us to hear your voices. We know that there's real people out there listening, which always feels good for us. So know that. And in the handout section, I have uploaded a PDF of my PowerPoint as well as Satya's handout. So if you are someone that likes to print those out and save them or take notes on them, that's where you can find them, is in the handout section. Okay, I'm going to just kick us off here and get started. I just wanted to touch on our upcoming conference. I sent out our conference agenda yesterday. It did say final, though it is missing one small session description, which will be added at some point between now and the conference. But that is pretty much our final agenda. Check-in. There are a few of you checking in early Monday morning, but for the most part, everyone is checking in on June 2nd on Sunday. One thing I didn't know last year is that the Mount Bachelor Village Resort front office closes at 10 p.m. So if you're coming from far away or you're not leaving your home until late, just know that you need to check in by 10 or you won't be able to check in that evening. And let's see, most people are checking out on the 6th. We have a few people checking out on the 7th. And then just a fun reminder that we're going to have a fun game night on Tuesday night. It's optional, but super fun, and would encourage you all to attend if you want to. If you indicated on your registration that you are interested in participating on a committee to help plan game night, you will be getting an email from me very soon to kind of start a discussion on how we want to plan that night. If you did not indicate that you want to be on that committee, but you do, shoot me an email. I'm going to pause for just a second and see if there's any questions on the conference. I'll be also sending out a reminder real soon. I don't remember the date off the top of my head, but when I submit our final rooming list, there is a cutoff date where if there are any changes made after that date, any changes that result in a fee or a room that goes unused that has to get paid for, those fees incurred will go to your program, not to central administration. So let's say a week before the conference, you have someone who's a supervisor or someone who says, oh, I can't go, or oh, I'm going to have to come a day late. The cost of that room will be billed to your program. You'll get an invoice for that rather than to our central administration. I see that Lori Martin has her hand raised. Sometimes that happens on accident, but I'm wondering if maybe you have a question. So I'm going to unmute you, Lori, and if you didn't have a question, just let me know. Hi, Lori, are you there? Oh, Lori, are you there? Okay, I'm gonna unmute her and assume that that was maybe by mistake. Okay, I'm gonna move on. Next, I wanted to touch on an update that we've made to our training guidelines document. This is a document that when you submit your new staff form and your new staff is signed up for core training, you receive a copy of this document for supervisors or program manager to review with your new staff person before they attend home visitor core training. This should be signed, and then they bring this with them and give it to their trainer on day one of their training. We added a few things on to this guidelines that we really just wanted to highlight, saying that you know that there's some additions so that you know they're there. First off, there's a section around expectations of the training participant, and there's a kind of subsection that talks about your attention, that the participant will leave their cell phones off, that they will you'll be there on time, and these things, right? And then we added a section. We've noticed over the last number of months an increasing number of participants that utilize the kind of, I know this sounds silly, but the coloring pages and the markers and the coloring pencils and whatnot, and they use it the entire training, during videos, during conversations, during group work, and they are just kind of head down using it the whole time. And it's starting to become a pretty significant distraction. So we've added that in here. If your new staff person is someone who really likes to have that kind of tactile work happening while they're learning, just having a conversation with them around when it's okay to do that and when it's not okay to do that. So that's kind of highlighted in there. Next, we added a section under really kind of the first section, actually, professionalism that you can expect from your Healthy Families trainers. We added a line in here that says, a call, when helpful, to your supervisor to offer additional professional development support. So this addition has really stemmed from over the last year or so, our trainers have noticed an increase in new staff really struggling to stay focused and be present during the trainings, and which then makes it hard to kind of grasp some of the main concepts that we're discussing during the trainings. So we added this line here so that it has a prize for out to express a new staff. So, you know, when our trainers notice something in a new staff person that's learning, or kind of raises a red flag, or just kind of, it's hard for a trainer to then hold on to that information and really know the best course of action, what to do with that. Do they call the supervisor? Do they call the program manager? Do they talk to the staff person without reaching out to their supervisor? And it really has just kind of been something we've grappled with over the last, I'd say, probably year, back and forth on how to approach those situations. So we just kind of decided we would add this line in to the training guidelines. That way, you know that you might get a call from one of our trainers with some helpful suggestions on how to support certain staff. And it's not to kind of, it's not about getting anyone in trouble or anything like that. It's really wanting to help our home visitors and all new staff be as successful as they can in their new role. We would also encourage you, if you have a new staff person and you want to know how they did in core training, please reach out to Satya, shoot her an email or call her, and she can talk through how that new staff person did during their training. So please feel free to do that as well. Are there any questions? I'm going to check the question box before I move on. I don't see any. Okay. This new form will be on Dropbox by the end of the day today as well. Okay. Next, I'm going to talk about the HFAS site profile report. I want to just acknowledge how frustrating this report was for all of you. I heard that frustration, and we're going to work to do to make some changes so that next year is not hopefully it's not frustrating at all, but it is to minimize the frustration of trying to fill out this report. The new 90% requirement was brand new this year. I did not know that was coming. Also the changes in what was being collected, that was new. And so I've reached out to HFA and let them know how frustrating those things are, especially I can speak for state systems, that's really hard for us to answer some of their questions when we don't know certain data points have changed. So I have reached out and done that, not gotten a response back. We'll see what happens there. But in preparation for next year's site profile report, I want to let you know a few things that that are in the works, some things that are already done, things that we're going to be working on. So I met with NPC Research for the better half of a day, and we walked through the site profile report, and we mapped it to every single family data piece of data that's requested. We mapped it out to what form and where that data is already being collected, or we indicated that it was not being collected and we need to collect it. So we've done that. We're working in the next few weeks to figure out of those data points we are not currently collecting, where can we add a question to collect those things. So for example, military families, that's a one on top of my head. We don't collect that data. Where could we add that onto the family intake form? A simple question that could collect that data for us. And then we'll be doing, once we've made those changes, again, and so just so you know and prepared, if you haven't figured this out already through my slide, that will mean some form changes. So just know that will be coming when we get there. Site profile report for next year ahead of time. We're going to go ahead and map onto that, onto the data guide, I think is what they call it, what status report table you can map that up for you guys so that you can have one document and you know exactly where to go to look for it. And then last, I've reached out to HFA and asked them for some guidance. I've let them know that it's really hard to have a apprentice with a whole lot of time. Well, for sure, our status report can't be ready by then. And so I've asked them whether they would prefer us to report on year-old data, or if they would prefer, or if they would allow us to complete the site profile report later in the spring after our status report has come out. So those are the steps we've taken to try and make this a smoother process next year. I realized it was super frustrating this year, and I apologize for us not having looked this far ahead last year. So we're working on it, and hopefully next year it runs a bit smoother. I'm going to pause and see if there's any questions. Actually, I think my next slide is questions. Are there any questions before we move to Satya's presentation? Cindy has a question. Let's see. Cindy asked, thanks for planning for 2020. What about 2019? That's what I meant. So next year in 2020, they'll be asking for 2019 data. That's what I meant. The work that we're doing now is, obviously we won't have all of that data, you're right, because we don't have the new forms out yet. So we're gonna work with HFA and figure out the best course of action for next year. And then as soon as we can get these forms updated with the new questions, we will be rolling those out, and I'll keep you guys posted along the way. Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, quick second and switch the controls here over to Satya so she can do her presentation. Let's see.
Good morning. Can you hear me, Ronnie?
Yep, I can hear you, and I see your screen.
Excellent. It's always good when we don't have technical glitches right from the beginning.
Right.
Okay, so as you all know, we have the Integrated Strategy for Home Visiting Core Training Manual has been updated, and they did change the names of Foundations for Family Support. The other curriculum that we had was a GGK created and adapted for HFA, and this one does not have a GGK copyright on it, so HFA was just wanting to really create their own and just update it, make it a little bit better. There's not significant changes in this, although it looks like it. I know when you start looking at the webinar from HFA National and you see the packet that they give you, it looks kind of overwhelming. And so I did send an email out kind of explaining that there's not a significant amount of changes in there. It's definitely more practice in some areas. Refinement, there's a few little sections that have been added, and we just want to make sure you have those. But when it comes to like the best practice standards and showing evidence of following those standards, it really is the two changes to the reflective strategies that we're going to want to see in the home visit records and the supervision notes. So I'm just going to walk you through just highlights and give you an opportunity to ask some questions and maybe clarify some things. I've already received some questions from folks, so I want to make sure there's not confusion. We do follow HFA trainings, but we also have our kind of Oregon flavor to things. So we do some things a little bit different, so I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Okay, so first off, the HFA Advantage has replaced the 5 guideposts. So it used to be called the 5 guideposts in our training manual, and that was that our program model is strength-based and family-centered, culturally sensitive, relationship-based, and we utilize the parallel process. That's just been converted to a different structure called the HFA Advantage, and but those elements are still in there, and I'll cover that on my next slide. There is a larger section on diverse family structures, which is really nice. I was really happy to see that. We have a new video, and in that section that's great on all the different types of families out there raising children. And there's some statistics in there, like from the Pew Institute, showing that according to their research, less than 46% of families in the U.S. have a so-called traditional structure with a man and a woman and children. And so we're really seeing cultural shifts and changes. And so that is discussed in the manual and discussed in the training a little bit and celebrated, like how, all the different types of ways that we could raise children. And so that's a nice addition in there. They have changed the term. Instead of using cultural sensitivity, the term that they're now using is cultural humility. We'll go over that in a minute. There are 2 new reflective strategies, and really one is just we're replacing feel, felt, found with feel, named, attain, and then we have a new reflective strategy for staff to use called thoughtful self-regulation, and that is not something that we would document on a home visit record. This is something that we would practice ourselves to get ourselves regulated and present in our work. There is, in the training, there's more cheers practice. So that has been, there's nothing new about cheers, there's just more opportunities to practice. There is a small section on co-regulation and what that means and how home visitors can co-regulate with parents that are dysregulated or having difficult emotions, and that parallel process with parents helping children that are unregulated to regulate. So there is a small section on that, which is nice. There's a very small section on temperament that's been added, and there's a small section on use of media with young children and recommendations. There are some good statistics in there in that section, like 30% of American homes on average have the television on 24/7, and how that impacts socialization skills and language development for children. And there's a little study in there on that it's definitely worth reading. And those are like the main overall changes in there. What Erin has sent out today is, this was also with the HFA webinar link. There's a full packet of anything in the manual that has had a change. It's 50 some pages long, very long. There is that. I've also pulled out the section just on the reflective strategies. There's a one-pager with all the reflective strategies that's updated. That has also been sent to you, so you can just print that out for your home visiting staff. It's not as overwhelming. Okay, HFA Advantage. I know a lot of you have been through this already. There's a video and whatnot, but just this is kind of the framework of the training is the use of this advantage. So the elements of the training are woven in to these 3 elements of being trauma informed and understanding that trauma does impact families, and that we do talk to families about their histories through the parent survey process. And we adapt our work with families based on what they've experienced. So that is woven in there. They've woven in the family-centered partnerships, the relationship-based interactions, and culturally humble practices under the relationship and attachment umbrella in the HFA Advantage, knowing that, you know, the relationships we build are the vehicles for effective services, and that how important it is to learn about what families value, about their culture, about what they're wanting from services, and to plan services together. And the third element is that piece around reflection, that it's key. Self-reflection is really key to maintaining healthy professional relationships and boundaries and avoiding projection, and that we know that reflective support is critical. As you know, this work is very complex, and it brings up a lot of feelings and can trigger our own unintegrated histories, can lead to secondary trauma. So it's important to have a place to really process what comes up for us, and that's why there's such a big emphasis in Healthy Families on supervision and that parallel process. So that's, in a nutshell, basically how they've organized the training around those 3 elements. So the section on cultural humility, while I think we could do more, it has been beefed up a little bit from cultural sensitivity that it used to be called. And those 3 elements that they talk about in the manual and in the training around cultural humility, one is the commitment to self-reflection and lifetime learning, that we're all biased. We need to practice self-awareness. We need to check our own biases, that it's okay that we don't know everything, and we want to ask versus making assumptions. The second is that we recognize that we're in a perceived position of power with families. And so we recognize power dynamics within our organization and with families, and we work toward repairing those imbalances. And the third is that we accept responsibility to engage in actions that eliminate institutional discrimination and align with people and groups that advocate for others. So HFA has definitely taken a stronger stance on this, which is great. And I know I've received some feedback about these elements not really being in the training before, and I did give that feedback to the national office. So I'm happy to see some of that woven into beefing up that section of the manual. So there is a lot to cover, and it's not a significant part of the training, but at least it's in there. Okay, so the webinar Kate did on the changes, she spends a significant amount of time going over cheers, and I have a few things to say to you all about that. As a state, Oregon is really ahead of a lot of other places. I'm saying this out of humility. Try not to brag, but we really are. We really are like ahead of a lot of other places in the nation around cheers. And so Danielle's just done an amazing job of really working with your sites on Cheers documentation, and we see that. And I talked with Danielle yesterday, and she said she's just seeing fantastic use of Cheers and reflective strategies in those Cheers in your sites. So what's happening at a national level? There's a lot of newer programs across the nation, and they're seeing a lot of issues with Cheers on their national site visits. People not using facts, not referring to both the child and the parent, using, not writing them appropriately, and then not only putting positives and not putting anything that the parent could work on, only using ATPs for reflective strategies in those sections. So those are some themes they're seeing at a national level, and that's what they were trying to address in the webinar. So there were a few things I do think that are good reminders from that webinar, and one is around the prenatal documentation of Cheers, that we want to start documenting Cheers on the second trimester, at least in one area, and we don't have to write frequency. And then in the third trimester, documenting at least 2 areas of Cheers, and again, frequency doesn't have to be documented. So I wanted to point that out. It's just a good reminder because I know there's been some confusion around that. And the other thing I want to point out is that in Oregon, the home visit record, based on your feedback, assumes that if you write a fact, that's representative of the majority of the visit unless you state otherwise. And so I know when Kate did the webinar, she put lots and lots and lots of emphasis on writing the frequency for the fact. We did that to save on documentation time. Now, that being said, if there is a significant event that comes up, let's say the majority of the time expression was going really well, but then at the last couple minutes of the visit, something happened that we were worried about. So we would document that and say, this happened the last couple minutes of the visit. And so that tells the reader most of the visit things were going really well, but this was kind of concerning or unusual for this parent. Or it could be that you've been working on holding with a parent for a while, and the baby was in a container for a significant amount of time this visit, but was out of the container a little bit more than usual, and you give an SATP for that, and you really want to bring that to your attention, like there was progress made. So you might say, 10 minutes of the visit, the mom held the baby close and rubbed the baby's back, and that would be a celebration, even though it was only 10 minutes. So please reach out if there's any confusion about that, but if you do not put a time frame, we are going to assume that your fact represents the majority of the visit. There was not a lot of emphasis on the webinar about using reflective strategies to support Cheers, but that absolutely is expected, and that is in the training, and we do practice that in the training. So that nothing has changed around that. And what Danielle and I have both been saying is, like, if you're a new staff person, to really try to at least have one reflective strategy. Especially when you're getting to know new parents, an ATP in the Cheers is really powerful and really important. So we want to see some ATPs there. So trying to have at least one reflective strategy that you've documented when you're a new staff person, and as you get more seasoned and used to using reflective strategies, we would expect to see more, maybe 2 or more. Do you want to, let's ask if there's any questions, Erin, before I go on. Erin. It sounds like maybe Erin took a break. So we're going to not do questions now, but if you have a question, please hold them. I thought there might be a question on this section. And again, I just want to emphasize nothing has changed in Oregon regarding Cheers. Just keep doing what we've been doing, and doing a great job at these. And and reach out through email or phone call to me or to Danielle if you have any questions or anything's confusing. Okay, so our new reflective strategy is feel, name to tame, and we retired feel, felt, sound, and the reason why that was retired was because we found that using that strategy, we were moving when a parent, we'd use that strategy when a parent was unregulated, when they're experiencing some difficult emotions, but we were moving really fast into problem solving. And as you all know, if you're upset about something and somebody goes right into problem solving with you, well, did you do that? You know, kind of that, did you do this? You could do this, you could do that. There's a level of frustration that we all feel when that happens because, you know, we're not in our cortex at that time. And you really need to be in your cortex to be able to effectively problem solve. So it's frustrating. And sometimes we don't really feel validated or heard when people jump too fast into problem solving. So that is the reason we retired feel, felt, sound. Now, it's not that your staff can't use it, but if they do use it, they just need to make sure that that time has elapsed, the parents' feelings have been identified and validated, and that they're regulated, that they've calmed down and they're in a place where they're really wanting to explore options. Then you can go into the last part of feel, felt, sound, where you can talk about things that other parents have tried and ask them if they'd like to try one of those. So hopefully that's helpful. So basically, feel, name to tame, that came from Dan Siegel's work, that if you use your left hemisphere to identify the feeling you're experiencing on the right hemisphere, that it helps integrate the brain. It helps bring the corpus callosum together so we can calm ourselves and have a more integrated response. So that's where that came from. We use it when parents are expressing strong emotions or having a reaction. It's meant to help increase awareness of emotions and increase parents' emotional vocabulary. And we know that emotions drive our behavior, and they do impact how we relate to each other. And we know that emotions are contagious. So it's pretty important. And we know that also when we feel validated, it helps calm ourselves. And I think the interactions would be better between parents and children if they have another adult that's helping co-regulate. So naming supports the parent in regulating and feeling listened to and validated. And the other section in the manual is about caregivers with limited awareness of their emotions can find it difficult to understand what their child might be experiencing emotionally and helping their child regulate their emotions. So again, this is this parallel process. So I did put some other options rather than using the feeling word. I know the feeling word might be a trigger for some. I know it is a trigger for some people. Some people don't like to be asked that. So here's some other ways that you can get to the internal experience the parents having to help them feel validated, help them identify and explore what they're experiencing without using the F feeling word. So just simply, you know, wow, what came up for you just now? I noticed your voice kind of sank, or you look really down right now. Can you tell me what you're experiencing? What do you think? What were you thinking when that came up? Or just saying, you know, wow, I could imagine that might be really scary or confusing. How was that for you? So there's lots of different ways we can just be present with what the parent's experiencing and not just moving them along. Because when we just ignore feelings that are coming up for a parent and we brush under the rug, just move along, it's like saying that their feelings don't matter, that it's not important, it's not validating. For a parent when we do that, and we really want parents to be able to have those discussions with their children and not move too quickly out of the feelings, to help their children be able to express what they are feeling. Okay, so we are, back to this for a second. with field name to tame, we do want to see your staff using FNT on the home visit record, and we want to see FNT being used in supervision with regards to, specifically, you might see this more often on the service plan as one of the strategies that a home visitor might be using for a parent that gets upset easily, or there might be just different circumstances where that would be appropriate. We'd want to see that there. Now, thoughtful self-regulation is a strategy that at all levels of HFA we all use, and that is just really practicing awareness of what's happening in our body, getting really attuned with when we're getting dysregulated emotionally and physically, and pausing for a moment and using some kind of mindfulness practice, some kind of self-care practice that helps you get back into your cortex, get back into present. And that could be any number of things. People have different strategies. There is a handout that I created with some ideas of ways you could practice self-regulation. Some of them you can do on a home visit. The parent wouldn't even notice, such like breathing, reframing your thoughts from something negative into something neutral. You can do some movement with your, stand up and stretch. You can just do a little grounding visualization really quick, things like that. Whatever helps you individually kind of get back into balance. I talked to another site about this. We called it the paper towel moment. I remember several times when I just found myself, like, something happened in a visit, and I just found myself leaving my body like, whoa, I just didn't even know what to say, where I said, I'm going to grab some paper towels out of my, or a toy or something out of my trunk. I'll be right back, where I literally had to leave the visit to go get something out of my car, where I could just, take a few deep breaths, oh my gosh, and think clearly, what do I say to this? I know I need to say something, I don't know what to say. So we're trying to get better at being able to regulate ourselves in the moment, and instead of not knowing what to do at all and just freezing or saying something inappropriate in reaction, and then you get back to the office and you're like, oh my gosh, I should handle that better. So we're just trying to practice that along the way so we can bring our presence back to parents and be more effective. Okay, this reflective strategy, we do not want you to write this on the home visit record, because this is not really about the parent. So this is something that we're not going to see on the home visit record, although we will see in supervision notes. So if you're discussing with the home visitor, like, wow, what was that like for you? That must have been kind of scary when dad was yelling like that. What did that feel like? What did you do? Then you could document in supervision notes that you discussed TSR, we could use the acronym, strategies, and what that the home visitor used during that visit. That would be an appropriate place to see that. We want to make sure you are having those discussions. We know you are, but here's an official strategy to show that you're having those discussions. Okay. Now, I did create some optional practice scenarios that I forgot to email to. I just realized when the webinar started that I forgot to email those to Erin. So we will get those out to you right after the webinar. So I think it's like 4 or 6 different strategies that you could use in a group setting. Like if you have a team meeting and you want to practice, like let's say the situation happened on a home visit, how would you use field name to tame? What are some different ways you could use field name to tame in this situation? What are some ways you might practice thoughtful self-regulation in this situation? So again, it's just optional. So we'll have that available for you. All right. Any questions? Erin? Unfortunately, I don't think I'm able to see the chat box. Let me look. Let me text Erin. Maybe she's having some difficulty with her computer. I am here, not sure why you can't hear me. There are no questions at this time. Okay, thanks, Erin. Okay, no questions. All right, if they do come up, please email me. I would be happy to clear up any confusion or talk you through anything. And do look at the materials. So we did provide the full packet of all the changes. So you do not need to order a manual. I know some of you have had staff that have gone through recently, so you have one manual at your site, but nobody needs to order one. So that's all been provided to you. You also have the short version of just the reflective strategies, and we'll send out some scenarios if you'd like to use those during the team meeting. All right, so I'm going to move on. Okay, so I was doing some research on initial parent engagement for another project that I work on, and I just thought there was some interesting information, and so I thought it would be nice to share with all of you. I have shared some of this in training, so it is relevant when we talk about changes to training. I am integrating this information during the parent survey core when we talk about how to make those first contacts with families and how to try to engage families when we're calling to set up a first home visit. So I want to make sure that you're getting the same information that your new hires are getting. Okay. Hold on a second. Okay, so there's been some really great information, and I have talked about this before, but just to make sure everybody's on the same page, from the Pew Charitable Trust national survey, and they did focus groups on home visiting services. So I thought it would be good to just kind of revisit some of the themes that came up. So what they realized is that parents prefer the term parent support in the home over home visiting. Home visiting actually brought up a lot of negative connotations. So it's important to think about that in terms of our brochures or the terms that we're using when we're talking about what we do. They preferred the term family support provider versus home visitor. I think HFA National chose family support specialist because in the research, they wanted somebody that had specialized training if they were going to come into their home. They wanted to know you were trained. The main thing parents were interested in this survey was reducing their stress. It was not about, the main concerns were reducing stress, assistance with financial stress, and housing came up as a big one as well. The parents wanted support for themselves. So they were more interested in that and less interested in the child's development aspect of it and attachment and bonding. So I thought that was interesting. They definitely, using the term free and voluntary came up as being important factors as well. So in the focus group, when they put out the word home visiting, they asked them, what does that mean to you? And these are the things we heard that came out of that discussion. Last resort, an intrusion, something punitive, big brother, child protective services, and a program for school truancy. The other thing that came out in one of the studies that I read was they thought it was like end of life care as well, like hospice. So the greatest benefit when parents were, when they shared, researchers shared with parents what a home visiting program for early childhood would look like, they said the greatest benefits would be personal and emotional support, referrals. The parents really wanted help accessing things like daycare and housing, and help with career and educational goals. Those things came to the top. What ranked near the bottom was providing a stimulating environment for children and emotionally bonding with their child. What they realized from the research was that parents don't think they have an issue in that area, that most parents think that bonding and attachment just comes natural and everybody's bonded and attached and securely attached, and it just wasn't a concern for them. Now, moving on to the 0 to 3 Millennial Connection Survey. This came out in 2018 in December. So November, December, it's really new research. And they were really interested in, like, who do parents trust and what information, if they want parenting information, what are they most interested in? Okay, so the sources parents trust the most were immediate family. So they're much more likely to join a parenting program if someone in their immediate family has done so, or friends, and they had a positive experience. So those networks are really important if you're trying to build program capacity, like build caseloads, and really asking the parents you're working with to help you get the word out. They really trust doctors and healthcare providers. And then it goes down a little lower to teachers and childcare providers and other professionals. But really having your brochures and and clinics is really a good strategy. We all probably know that, but that's a great strategy, reaffirms that, and those personal connections as well. And then I thought this was interesting, is that when parents do seek information, these are the topics that they report being most interested in. So developmental milestones is way at the top. So is nutrition. I thought that was really interesting. I didn't expect that. Language is way up there. Their children behaving is really high up there. The lowest was separation anxiety and bonding. So that was interesting. So just thinking about, we want to make sure that when we're introducing our program, I'm sure we all do this, but just really emphasize that we do focus on developmental milestones. And you may even mention bringing out information such as nutrition when it comes to health and safety categories that we focus on in HFA as well. We definitely do a lot around language and communication in our program. Okay, so in a nutshell, it was parents really, they trusted research-based information. So they want to know, what does the research say? What's the research say about brain development and whatnot? So using that term, telling parents that we follow the American Academy of Pediatrics, because that's something that parents trust. They really trust immediate and extended families. They like to hear stories from other parents that have been in the program. So that's super effective. They like information that reinforces their own beliefs and values. So I think really making a point that we learn about your values and what's important to you, and we tailor our program based on that, would be something important to say. They do trust in-person resources more than online, although we do have parents searching online. So these are some of the websites that parents are most likely to utilize. Okay, that was it in a nutshell. I did provide one of those studies. The other one, the Pew information I have is our slides, but if anybody does want those slides, you can more than what I did give you here, you can email me. Erin did send out the millennial survey, so you can look. There's a lot more than in there, good stuff in there than I went through. So there might be something else that you want to look at if you're working on that. working on initial engagement at your site. Okay, any questions or comments? So Erin, can you type in, I'm guessing there's no questions and no comments. Any comments? Erin, can you type in so I know that you hear me? Oh, Erin's texting me now. Okay. Here's a question. The fan uses mindful self-regulation. Can we use that as well? Good question. Yes. And I know I've been using the term mindful self-regulation in Supervisor Core for a while, and it's in the supervisor manual, and it's from FAN. What the word on the street that I heard was that because it's being used in FAN and we don't have a copyright contract, I guess, with them, although they're working on a contract with the FAN folks at Erickson Institute. Because of that, they decided to use thoughtful self-regulation. I don't think it really matters if either one. However, if you do use mindful self-regulation, make sure if you're chosen for a HSA national site visit, make sure that they know that. Be really clear about that. In fact, you might want to give them a list of the acronyms that you use. That would be my main concern. So Erin is having difficulty with changing over to audio, so we're not able to see or we're not able to hear her. Okay, and Beth Dasher, so Erin texted me that to send slides from the initial engagement. Oh, the slides from today, or the slides from the Pew Institute, I think she's saying. Okay, we'll make sure that you get the slides. Any other last minute questions? All right, so I'm just going to wrap us up. It's Wednesday, halfway through the week. The sun is starting to come out. We're going to get some more outside time coming, hopefully this weekend. So enjoy your week, and thank you so much for joining us. And please reach out with any questions at any time. Take care and have a great day, everyone.